You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
One of our regular features on Weekend Sport is a wander down memory lane, catching up with some of our sporting stars from years past. All-rounder Shane Thomson played 19 Test matches and 56 one-day internationals for New Zealand between 1990 and 1996, scoring close to 1,000 runs in each of the two formats. He scored over 6,000 runs and took more than 200 wickets across the formats in a decade-long top-level career, with all of his domestic cricket played for Northern Districts. He could bat in the top, the middle or the lower order and bowl both medium pace and off-spin. In the 1993-1994 summer, he memorably scored an unbeaten Test century in Christchurch against a Pakistan attack containing Wasim Akram and Waka Yunus as New Zealand chased down 324 to win the Test match. He retired at the age of just 28, midway through the summer of 1996-97. Shane Thomson is with us now. How are you, mate?
Pretty good, actually. Just listening to that, if I'd have been playing for that long now, the IPL in the 2020s, I might have made a quid out of it.
I was gonna ask you that near the end, but maybe we should ask it at the start. You would have enjoyed 2020, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would have, I think. I still prefer watching Test cricket more than anything else, but I think, the T20s captured the imagination of the public and certainly allows you to bat with the freedom that, we did in the net sometimes, but not often in the middle.
Did you ever play Cricket Max? Was that around when you were around? Did you play a bit of that?
It had just started, Martin Crowe's, baby, and we just played a couple of games of that, and, then 2020 sort of took over. But, Martin was pretty instrumental in looking into changing, how the game was played, I suppose, and appealing to the public in a different way. Let's
start at the start. Where and when did your cricketing journey begin?
Well, it started probably Fendleton Primary School, Christchurch, when I went to school down there. And I think, like with any sports, you tend to just play what your mates play. And Fendleton had a good cricket team, and I thought I'll try a bit of that. And Christchurch has always been pretty strong in cricket. So previous to that, I'd lived in Hokitika with my parents. And I don't know how much cricket I would have played had we stayed in Hokitika. But nevertheless, we got to Christchurch and it started there and really fell in love with it. Those early days, we used to go to coaching camps in the school holidays with the likes of Richard Hadley, Bevan Congdon, Dale Hadley, those guys. Pretty fortunate, really, to get exposed to that sort of thing, Brian Hastings. And just fell in love with it, and then sort of moved up to the North Island and went to, Dad was with Fletcher, so we moved around with corporate jobs, and then sort of settled in Hamilton for my secondary school. That was and we had quite a strong team in Hamilton Boys High School, and started really playing against men that level, sort of 13 or 14 years of age.
And when did you start making rep teams and things like that?
Probably consistently, it was around about intermediate or first year of high school. Started to probably develop a little bit more strength and size. And in those days, I could actually bowl reasonably quickly for youngster. And that probably got me noticed, I suppose, first and foremost. Although the batting was always up front too. I actually did all right batting wise when I was about 13 or 14. So it was always an all rounder, but I certainly bowled a bit quicker in the early days. You
were unique in that you bowled both medium pace and quite quickly by the sounds of it when you were younger, and off spin. So how did that come about?
The run up got shorter every year. So when I was sort of about 16, 17, because I always used to go to the Dennis Lilly camps when he came out. And without sort of sounding silly, he said I would have been playing, as a fast bowler in first class cricket at about sort of 18 over there. Because I was bowling okay. I was bowling, I went to New Zealand A tour to Zimbabwe and opened the bowling with Danny Morrison, got my hand broken, and Chris Cairns replaced me. So Chris, Danny and I were bowling about that sort of pace back then. But to be fair, I came back to New Zealand wickets, and Chris had that extra couple of inches on me in terms of height and could get bounce, and I just kind of, on flat wickets, I probably, bowling fast is not going to get you wickets, against great, good players just by bowling quick and not moving as much, as I found out against Martin Crowe once or twice. And so then kind of decided to concentrate more on sort of, bowling one day sort of medium pace stuff for the odd bouncer, but in the style of, I suppose I'd watched, Steve Waugh and Mark Waugh and thought, well, I can do that. Plus, I'd always had injuries with my lower body, shin splints, bad ankles, knees, just because of the way I landed. And we were never kind of told about biomechanical things back in those days. We just ran up and flicked it down as hard as you could, and I think a lot of people suffered. A lot of people suffer with back injuries. Mine were lower body injuries. And so the run-up just started to get shorter. And then it came to a point where I just was really getting sore doing that, and I thought, well, I'm just going to concentrate back on batting, which I did. However, it's a bit boring standing around the field, all the time not doing anything. And I'd always bowled a little bit of off-spin in age group cricket or in the nets, and also when I played in England a little bit, I'd sort of dabbled with it, and I thought, well, maybe I can bowl a few overs in the one days. And that sort of turned into bowling, being that sort of fifth bowler, sixth bowler in the one days, and then bowling the 10 overs, and then occasionally, scuttling one through on the odd test match and hitting a bit of something in the wicket that sort of made it do something that normally wouldn't do. And I'm not a big spinner of the ball, but it was just a handy kind of thing to throw in for a few overs here and there. And I think actually in one match I bounced out Tendulkar even though I was bowling spinners in the test match. It was just because I had been able to bowl fast at one point, and I thought, well, he's whacking us around so much. Everyone thought it was a real good plan, but there was no plan. He was just belting us around the park so much, so we had no other option. So I bowled him a bouncer and see what happened. But I guess just having another bowler to be in that side is a bit of an option to give the other guys a rest as well was good. I've been told by a number of people that I was not up to it sort of off spinner, but I never really tried to be. I was just really a fill-in bowler. But in the one days, particularly on those wickets back in the 90s in New Zealand, there was lots of guys could fill in just 3 or 4 or 5 overs, maybe sneak in 8 or 9 if it's going well, and diddly dobblies, as you know. They were called, or we were called, and it sort of worked for, when you're scoring, 220 and it's a winning total. It's a lot different now. I don't know if I'd love to be bowling in the 2020s now, or I'd have to be doing something different. But, back in the day, if you land at sort of 6 balls in roughly the same place, you had a chance of going for 4 and over, which was quite handy.
Absolutely, it was. Your first class debut for Northern Districts just before you turned 19. Were you ready for first class cricket? In retrospect, I probably wasn't ready for any of the cricket that followed, really. At the time you think you are, you think you're bulletproof. But, I look back now and think, no, we were kids and we weren't ready. And I just look at guys like Daryl Mitchell that have come into the side now and are much, much better prepared, and it's not such a big jump. I think I'd played 6 one-dayers for Northern Districts when we got thrown in against the Tri-Series, and I went okay in the first game against India, but then we came across Australia, which was a different kettle of fish, and Dean Jones, I think, got about 3,000 runs in 3 innings against us, and I remember we just couldn't stop him scoring, and I certainly couldn't, and I'd never come across that. I literally, as I was running up to bowl, I was thinking, if I can just get my arm lower and lower and lower, almost below horizontal little skid, he won't be able to hit it as far. I had no idea what to do in that situation. And so that's how naive I suppose we were. So at the time you think you're bulletproof, but looking back, we weren't prepared. I was talking to Brian Young the other day. We were having a drink and was sort of talking, he'd never faced a leg spinner, and you come up against Shane Warne. And there you go. That's going to be hard work in anyone's book. So, we weren't prepared really. Well, I'm glad you've brought Brian Young up, because that leads nicely into the next question, which is about that 120 not out against Pakistan and Christchurch. You batted for a long time with Brian, who got out just before the winning runs were hit to chase down 324. What do you remember most about that innings?
I remember getting 100 and thinking, and we only needed another, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40. And I remember thinking, this is still not over, because they had the ability to come back, Wasim and Waka, and knock over 6 or 7 wickets. It was a reverse swing particularly. I thought, I was happy and acknowledged that I got the 100, but I thought we've still got a way to go here. And I do remember that vividly. I also remember there's been a lot of talk about that match because, obviously they won the first 2 and then we got a record. And all I can say is if there was anything untoward going on there, which I don't think there was, then they are better than we even think, because I got hit from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. And if they were pulling their punches, well, I don't know. I'm either a lot worse than I thought I was, or a lot better. There was no let up there for us, in that, in that game, really, or I felt that anyway.
How quick were those two? How challenging was it to face Waka Yunus and Wasim Akram?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the speedball thing now is a bit more accurate. It certainly wasn't as accurate in the old days. And I came across Waka in Sharjah in 1990, and he swung it both ways, and he was as quick as anything I've ever seen. There were one or two senior players who shall remain unnamed, but one was a wicketkeeper who just refused. We got bowled out for 80 or something, and I think about 20 of them were extras. And he was seriously quick, as quick as anything I've seen. So, and you can tell, not so much by the speedball radar in those days, but you can tell when the keeper's taking it or the batsman, where the reaction, you can tell. And so I would say he would be up there back in those days with anything that's around today. Maybe Brett Lee slightly quicker, but who's to know? And Wasim, well, he was just a different kettle of fish altogether. I've never faced anyone that's as difficult to play. He was a freak. He could bowl incredibly quick ball. As Richard says, he's got the quickest bouncer he's ever faced. But he could bowl off 5 paces. He had about 3 different actions, swung it both ways. Aggressive, but also a very just a wonderful swing bowler. And I don't know. I've never been hit in the head before I played Pakistan, and he almost did it for a pastime. He just could bowl that bouncer and off a length, and it would raise, and very, very, very difficult. He's the best probably I've ever faced, and the only solace that I have is occasionally when I'm reminiscing, I suppose, and looking through YouTube at different things, I look at some other cricketers that have had an awful lot of difficulty with him too, and I wasn't the only one, because he certainly tickled up some very, much better players than me. And he just was that good. He was a freak. I mean, I remember watching him in England playing Langley, bowling in sand shoes with no sprigs, just about 3 or 4 paces, and guys couldn't lay a bat on him. So he was an absolute freak. So
the 120 not out's worth about 240 then in that case.
I'd like to. Well, I mean, it sounds like it. Yeah. The longer the years go out, the better I think I'll become. Yeah, that'll be good.
You were 93 not out at stumps on day 4 too. So did you sleep all right that night?
Not really, no, because I knew how much work it was still to be done against them, because it was not uncommon for them to come over and knock over 5, 6, 7 wickets really quickly, and then they're very, very hard to beat in that situation, yeah, especially with that reverse swing.
You were part of the New Zealand side that went to South Africa in 94. You got 80-odd in the first innings of the first test, which New Zealand won, but then lost the next 2. That was the tour, of course, when 3 of your teammates were sanctioned for smoking marijuana. How challenging a tour was that?
I don't know. What would you say about the tour? We were pretty ecstatic about that first test win. Durban was the second test, and it was an up and down wicket, and I think I got a few runs in that one too, I think, but more by good luck and good management. I think it had a bit of a whack at it. And so that was anyone's game. We were very disappointed, obviously, losing that, and South Africa got a bit of momentum back. Then we had a one-day tournament in the middle of it, and by the third test, there was quite a gap between those test matches, and I think we just lost a bit of momentum, lost a bit of form, and by the end of it, we were fairly easy pickings for them. It was a difficult tour. The incident with the pot smoking created a bit of a divide within the team, I suppose, and that was unfortunate. I think the management dealt with it very well over there, because we were going into a test match not soon after that. But it obviously kind of, when we came back home, it blew up again and adversely affected a few of the guys, which was a shame. And I think that we learned a lot of lessons from that, I suppose. I mean, it was a comedy of eras. I was on the social committee at that stage for organising functions, and we had a team dinner the night before the second test, I think, at Durban, and the theme was sex, drugs and rock and roll, and we actually invited all the TV3 guys to come along, which, in retrospect, and there was nothing untoward at the dinner, but you can imagine after the story got out and was leaked what happened, back home, and then the TV3 guys had been filming us, all dressed up in fancy dress costumes and looking like we were, something out of a rock and roll sort of magazine. It just was a crook look, with everything that went down. So it was a comedy of errors in that regard. I didn't probably notice it too much over there because I had an okay tour. what I do remember is, getting off the plane, and we'd had a few injuries, and we had a pretty understrength side, really, to be fair. And I didn't know how well we were going, and then to win that first test, ecstatic. But it was a disappointing tour, and we came home with a bit of a sour taste in our mouth for sure.
You retired, Shane, from first-class cricket, not just from international cricket, but from first-class cricket when you were just 28. Why was that?
Probably a couple of reasons. I broke my thumb, I think it was, during the season, and basically was out for the last half of the season, didn't play again. I had an opportunity to go and do something else with at that time partner in a business sense, and decided it was probably more secure. Because, back in those days, don't forget, we got paid if we played, but other than that, we were $40 a day for Northern Districts cricket. So, we had to do something else. I'd honestly, in that regard, had thought I'd play till I was 30, if at best. I had another opportunity come up to do something else, and to be fair, also, I got dropped once when I was young. I was about 20, and then made it back into the team, and wanted to, and worked hard to do that. But to be honest, I wasn't enjoying the environment at that stage. The coach and captain at that stage was Glenn Turner and Lee Jamont, and it was a tumultuous time. There was issues with Chris Cairns. There was issues with people that perhaps, people will say that, or certain people will say they were individuals or rebels or whatever, and we weren't. But we perhaps didn't respond that well to being micromanaged, every second of the day, and it wasn't a particularly good environment. And I didn't think that was going to change. I thought that's going to be the way it is for the next couple of years, and I just didn't have the energy or the desire to work my way back into that team when I wasn't really enjoying it. Because for me, it's always about being, enjoying the thing. And I understand it's a professional era, but I was delighted to hear Ryan Fox talk about when he went through a lean period a couple of years ago, that he talked to his father, and his father said, look, just enjoy yourself and go back to doing that. And since then, he's gone really well. And it's always been about that. It's never been a job or work for me. I really wanted to enjoy my cricket, and I wasn't enjoying it then. So I thought, well, if you're kind of looking out the window and you're pretty happy that the clouds are coming over, it's time to go and do something else.
Indeed. So you reckon you were playing your best cricket when you had a smile on your face?
Absolutely. I played my best cricket for Northern Districts and New Zealand under Jeff Howe. He gave me the freedom and the rope to sort of look after myself a little bit, and ironically, probably trained harder then than ever. But because you when you're given that freedom and given that the ability to be an individual, I think I thrived on that. But they had a different philosophy after a few incidents within the team, and team management came in and sort of they said they were going to do it a different way, and I just wasn't enjoying it. I remember talking to Stephen Fleming a couple of years later in England when I was over there, and I was watching a game, test match, and he said, it's a pity you didn't stick on, because they, obviously got Steve Rickson in, and as an Aussie, he said the environment was really, really good then, and guys were encouraged to play the natural game, and they were encouraged to take responsibility, and everyone kind of started to play as a team and for one another, which wasn't really the case, in some of the cricket that I played in.
Interesting. So do you have any cricketing involvement today, Shane?
No, I don't really. I watch a bit of it on telly. I still like the test matches for sure, and I do like watching Daryl. I must admit, I knew his father a little bit, and I think he's great. I think this new Ravindra, he's excellent. A few of the old guard are coming to the end. That'll be interesting with Southey and Trent Bolt's obviously probably not out of it, or pretty close out of it now. Kane's coming to the twilight of his career, but there's some depth in New Zealand cricket. I think we used to go real highs and lows. We would have a good side and then we'd have nothing for a while. But now there seems to be more depth, and guys can come in and they're a bit better prepared. And I think also the Bazball thing's been interesting for me to watch and listen. I see Boycott criticising the other day, but there's nothing new to this game. And if I think about the era of cricket that I fell in love with, it was in the 70s. Now you think about that West Indian team, the Calypso cricket they played. It was exciting attacking cricket. England had both of them. the Aussies had Shackles who were mad hookers, and they had Lilly and Thompson. It was all very exciting, attractive, and attacking cricket, And so I think that's what a lot of people, I fell in love with, and I think a lot of people fell in love with. And if we get back to a little bit of that, within reason, I'm not saying reverse sweep every single delivery, but that's what people want to see, even in Test cricket. And so I think that's that'll be the change that is needed for guys to go out and express themselves, and hopefully that may continue.
Indeed. So what does take up most of your time these days?
Trying to find a way to retire.
From what though? From what?
yeah. So I've got a property maintenance business in Taupo that I bought and then kind of continued to grow it, I suppose, over the last 20 years. So we look after a lot of holiday homes, do landscaping on them. Not much hard landscaping, but trees, gardens, hedges, all that sort of stuff, and look after people's holiday homes really. And I also, back when I was playing cricket, I met a guy who's unfortunately passed away now, but had a bit of influence over me in terms of saying, well, maybe start investing in property, and that was back in the good old days of low doc loans and low, and interest rates that were okay, and so sort of started doing that. And I've got a little business that is a residential property investment company too. So we do that. And that keeps me busy. And then I try and play tennis probably 2 to 3 times a week. And still get to the gym and do a bit of. Now I'm at the age where I do Pilates as well. Everyone seems to do Pilates in their 50s, but to be fair, that's made a difference, because after so many years of playing sport, body was out of balance in terms of how you use your muscles, and I was getting aches and pains for no reason. I know it used to be that you walked into something and you were sore in the morning, but now I was getting sore without knowing what I'd done to myself.
Wow, Shane, it's been awesome wandering down memory lane with you, mate. I remember the headband on occasion. I remember the pop collar. I remember you smashing bowling attacks and always having plenty to say, but enjoying your cricket as well with a smile on your face. It's been so good to chat, mate. Thanks for taking so much time with us.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Shane. Shane Thomson there with us on Weekend Sport.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday, or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.